Welcome to the Executive Shift podcast with your host, Kim Borchers, where we explore the pivotal moments when accomplished leaders step out of the private sector and into public service. Today's episode is presented by Bird Dog Recruitment and Consulting.
Hello, I'm Kim Borchers, and welcome to the Executive Shift. And our goal, as always, over the next few minutes is to inspire you or be a catalyst if you are outside of state government to consider leaving the private market and coming in and sharing your skill sets to help government run more efficiently. And I know I always say this, but our guest today is a very dear friend. And I think he can credit me for where he is today, right? Shawn Sullivan, welcome to the Executive Shift.
Am I your OG recruit?
Absolutely, you are. You are my OG.
16 years ago? Yeah.
Well, no, you know what? So Shawn and I met each other. It was 2011. We were in the process of looking for a secretary of aging. And this young guy walked in, and I'm thinking, why would we?
Much younger back then, yes.
Why would we place him as a cabinet secretary over aging? I'm like, and man, we got done, and I'm thinking, this is the guy. So, Shawn, welcome. And you know, I know currently you work for Midland. What's the official title for Midland?
Yeah, I'm the president and CEO of Midland Care. We are a nonprofit organization that provides services in Kansas and Missouri to persons with serious illness, and then also older adults that are aging in place. So we have several service lines that do that. Great organization, great nonprofit mission, and doing really important work.
So what I'd like you to share just a little bit as to, why did you say yes to coming into state government to be a cabinet secretary? You were doing very well because you were running a nursing home at the time.
Yeah, I had previously, because I've had kind of three stints to my career. So the first stint prior to government was in senior living executive type of roles. And so I joined because of money, power, and the stock options. No.
You can tell he's a joker.
So, that wasn't anything that I'd ever really thought about. I was living close to family, grandparents. We had 3 kids at the time, had just moved into a new house, loved our church, loved the school that my oldest went to. Like, if you would have asked me the day before I got a call of, would you be interested in coming to interview with this? Like, it wouldn't have been on my top 50 jobs for the future of that you should, or I should consider. Just nothing against it. It just really had never entered my mind. And so I was sitting in my office at work on a Friday morning in December 2010, and I had someone call me that said, "Hey, I just turned your name in to the governor's transition team. They're looking for good people to run this agency and to do this job." I was like, "Okay, thanks." And then I had somebody else call me separately from that and said, "Hey, I just turned your name in the transition team. They're looking for good people. I think you actually would be great for this." It's like, okay, well, thanks. And then I got a call from the transition office and said, would you come up and interview for this? Here's what it is. And as God would have it, I was going to be in Topeka anyway, early the following week. And so I thought to myself, let's go interview and see what happens. And if nothing else, it'll be a neat experience I can say to others that I wouldn't have had before. And so came up and actually interviewed with you and one other. And just throughout that process, just started thinking of what my personal values were. And I'm very big, and I think it's very important that personal values and personal mission matches the values of an organization or a job and the person you're working for. And I just really learned over the course of when I was evaluating that was a great match. So my personal values are, I like to do hard things. I like to lead organizations that are doing hard things. I like to, in that particular role or what I've been doing before, be in places that are taking care of the frail or vulnerable in different respects. I like to be able to make an impact, live out my faith, kind of was very important to me, and just felt like those things were a perfect match for his organization or government job, and then just kind of left that interview and started thinking about it and praying about it and felt like it'd be a good fit. And then,
Do you remember what you said? Do you remember what you said to me? I'll never forget.
wow.
We were sitting there, and in my head, I'm going, "This is the guy. I mean, this is the guy who needs to take the job." And you're like, "Well, I'm not really sure about this. I want my kids in a Christian school." And I said, "Well, how convenient. I sit on the board. On the board of directors for a Christian school here in Topeka, Kansas. Let me tell you
I
about
do
it."
remember that. Yes, yes. I think you actually gave me the name of the head of school to go talk to on my way out of town. I was like, oh, it's a
I
little
did.
bit presumptuous. And then, yeah, so I started thinking about it and processing it on the way home, and even called Jenny, my wife, on the drive home. And she decided to throw in at the time that, hey, just so you know, as you're thinking about this, we're thinking about this. I'm pregnant with our fourth child. It's like, oh, well, great, thanks. Yeah, let's add something else in. So, but it ended up being the right thing for me. So,
Yeah. What, a move, job change, and a child.
you
I mean,
know,
all you needed, one more stressor.
but
So, first of all, let me just say this, and all jesting aside, Shawn Sullivan is the kind of individual that you want leaving private sector coming in to government. He was an innovator. His heart is in the right place. He was about doing the right things. And you moved from being a cabinet secretary of aging to ultimately becoming our budget director, which I wanted to fight that because I'm like, no, you can't leave this job because that means I got to backfill that if you move into here. Because it was hard. I didn't want to have to replace him. And then I know later in the administration of Governor Collier, you ended up being the chief operating officer, kind of moving up again, having more responsibilities. So with all of that as kind of, what you did in government, my question for folks to listen to who might be hearing this is what were you surprised by? And then what were you like, okay, this is exactly what I expected?
maybe the latter part first of what I expected. So the reason I eventually took the job in 2011 that turned out to be true was a good match for my personal and professional values. And again, I think that's important. So it was in all three jobs I had: cabinet secretary, budget director, chief operating officer. It was definitely work that we do in government that has a deep impact. So, I mean, we're talking about everything from the importance of mental health programs to helping older adults stay home to, education, universities, corrections. It's deeply important work, and it's important that we get it right, or that government gets it right, so administrations get it right. And so that 100% was true. I think the part that surprised me, and maybe recognizing that I was from the industry, at least for the first job that I had as a cabinet agency head, though I had exposure and had deep interest in legislative stuff and politics, and always watched it and had interest in it, but I had no idea about the inner workings of legislative branch or executive branch, or what all the different cabinet agencies were, or what different governor's office staff did, or how the process worked itself out to develop policy. So I was extremely ignorant about all that, and it is really complicated, and it's extremely important to have alignment with the vision between an agency, the governor's office, the legislative branch, the agency stakeholders. And so, although that's not really all that important from other organizations or companies, but so I was surprised on just kind of how all that work. Other things, I would say that government, not necessarily the boss we had, Kim, government's set up to be pretty risk adverse. They really want to stay out of the front pages and really ask their cabinet heads to make sure that happens, and aren't implementing initiatives to where there is risk. That was a learning lesson. I think there's a lot of antiquated systems sometimes in government that need to be modernized, whether that's IT or something else. I think there's sometimes a lot of negativity from the outside at the time that we were coming in was kind of the advent a couple of years after or post social media that played an impact. A couple of random things. I was surprised how many staff came to meetings to make a decision. So, just a lot of things like that. Just for someone that really had no familiarity with state government, there were a lot of things for me to be surprised about. I loved it. I don't want to minimize it. I loved it.
No. With that being said, though, do you think because you didn't have the background, it allowed you to ask the questions that most people wouldn't normally ask because they go, "Oh, that's just the way we've always done it." I mean, and you're a smart guy. I mean, you picked it all up. It wasn't that. It's not that it's hard, but it's not unmanageable.
It is not. I think it's important to find mentors, to find people that are knowledgeable about how the systems work, whether that be legislative mentors or governor's office mentors or other cabinet head mentors or colleagues in other states that have done this for a while longer. I think all that's important. But it is definitely 100% able to pick it up for someone that's led organizations. So yes, I do think that's important. I do think it's important. I do think it's a good skill to ask lots of questions and sometimes be annoying. And I think whether it's the cabinet head or the administration as a whole, to find staff that are willing to challenge the system. So I think that's an important aspect of what leaders should be doing.
So you mentioned an interesting thing, and I'm in complete agreement with you, is that many politicians are risk averse. And when we wonder why things are not changing or getting better, it's because can they take the risk, right? I mean, you're the politician. You could do this in private sector. Let's say you change your IT system and you have some hiccups and you're down for 24 hours. That happens in government. And oh my goodness, it's top of the fold paper, failure from this administration. And so you wonder why you have an antiquated system is because nobody wants to take the risk to bring in a modernized one.
That's 100% true. And I think that's why a lot of things are left unchanged for such a long time. So, my approach was similar to a lot of colleagues or yours. It's find the right people, develop a strategy, and then have execution or an operating platform to go behind it. And so whether it was changing an IT system or for us or for me, it was working through a large redesign of the Medicaid agencies or Medicaid program. It was important to talk to stakeholders, ask lots of questions, have stakeholders that you're continually going to ask how it's going that could help filter through the noise and not just assume that what you're hearing, good or bad, was what the truth was. So there's really a lot of things that went into that, Kim.
So let me ask you this question from twofold. If you were sitting down with the governor and advising him on, let's say, the areas that you touched, aging, and budget. When you think of places like Minnesota that had all of the fraud, I mean, you kind of sit there and go, how is that possible, right? I mean, that much billions and billions of dollars of fraud. What would you tell him to do? Where would you tell him to start?
Hiring the right people. I don't want to oversimplify things, but hiring the right people, hiring the right agency heads, hiring the right staff, hiring the right policy staff, and then layering or cascading below those people, the right people that are going to be honest, fair, competent, ask questions. I mean, I don't think it's more complicated than that. I think it also is good to bring in outsiders to do audits. There is a steep learning curve when you come in, particularly if you haven't had experience in government. And I think it's the right thing to do to find mentors that have done that before, either before you in that state or in other states. I read and wish I would have done this all those years ago. Of someone that said that they had a landing team that went in and kind of helped them go through and really assess where things were, what was working, what wasn't, and kind of developed a quick plan for what needed to be changed. So think all those things are important. Again, I think it's important to challenge the system and have staff that are willing to do that. So I think all the organizations that I've led, I try to ask our staff, my staff, on a regular basis, whether it's those that report to me or those that are at all levels. What are things that we should keep doing? What are things that we should stop? What are things that we should start? It's just kind of the basics. And I think if you do that, then things tend to work themselves out.
Now, I was thinking about our time together, and I wanted to ask you this, and you actually kind of, it's a good transition from another statement that you made. It's like, you'd never really known how the legislative branch, the executive branch, but on the legislative side, because what's fascinating to me is that the legislative side, I mean, that's where the law is created. That's not what does the daily stuff, right? When the legislature leaves, right? That's what I was always, the legislature's gone.
Yeah. When you see the tail lights, that's a good day.
Right. Because I think people don't realize it's so different, right? You have to run government when the legislature leaves. They're just passing the laws to maybe add something to your desk that you're going to have to implement that year. But what do you feel like? What are the skills that you acquired, or what do you think you brought to the table that made you effective? Let's say as a cabinet secretary, specifically in the Department of Aging. What was the value add?
Yeah, so it is important to have alignment with legislators, and particularly legislators that are on the committees that are important to you, whether that be a budget committee. For me, it was the Human Services Budget Committee. When I became budget director, it was, of course, the larger budget committees and subcommittees. And so, having been a leader of nonprofit organizations where you just can't go and say, here's what I'm going to do, and then go do it, where you do have to find alignment with staff, the community, a board of directors. It is important and a good skill to have to find that alignment, not only with the governor's office and your industry stakeholders, but with the legislative branch. And so I would bring them very early and would develop relationships with them. I would go visit them. I'd give them my cell phone. I would offer to go do forums in their districts, again, particularly the ones that were important to me and the committees that I was in front of all the time. I would offer to give them material for their newsletters. I mean, it was just kind of how can we be a resource to you type of thing, and also walk through and help them better understand what your agency did is also important. So I think all those things are important. So I probably testified in front of committees, I don't know, 1,000 to a couple thousand times over the course of 8 years. And the overwhelming majority of them are great people. They're there for the right reason. They want to do a good job. They ask earnest questions and are there to help you. So sometimes you do get caught situations where that may not be the case. And maybe someone tried to catch you and get a headline out of whatever it is. But overwhelming majority, they're there to be helpful and to do the right thing. And I have many friends still from those days that were legislators or still are or used to be. So it was actually a pretty neat experience to go through.
Well, you were always very good. You were not vinegar when you walked into a committee hearing room, right? So
my wonderful effervescent personality, Kim.
It is. I was telling before we started taping this, I always had this joke with Shawn because he would come in, he would be very stoic. And then I go, well, I'm not going to answer any questions until you put a smile on your face. And it was just like, it would just slowly come to the side. And it was just kind of, he always knew that was coming. And I love doing that to him. So let me ask you this question from this perspective, because you mentioned a little bit about the things that you didn't know, and you talked about hiring the right people. Why do you think it's important for the private sector or nonprofit sector to come in and work for government for a period of time? Why should they do that? Why leave? Because you made more money when you were outside. than coming in. I mean, you and we've talked about this before. I'd never worked so hard in my life and made such little money. And it was very rewarding. So I want to be honest with that. But why should people do that?
I think it's some of the things that I already mentioned. So it's living out your values, except perhaps in a broader way. I mean, I was doing important things, I felt like, at the organizations that I was at prior. But this was an opportunity to do it on a statewide basis, and I felt like to make a deeper impact than I would have been able to otherwise. So to me, that was the number one reason. I would say it tests and grows leadership skills. And so if it's someone that maybe is younger that can go through this, it's not the reason to do it, but I felt like it helped me be a better leader after I left government. And it's helped me to be a better leader, particularly the organization that I've been at now and have been at for the last 6 or so years. It helps me to know, having been through the crucible of that for 8 years, to know how to navigate government and programs and who to talk to, who I need to convince, how, where I go to in other states. So I feel like my organization gets the benefit from that. And I'm in a much different spot in my career, better spot in my career than if I wouldn't have done it otherwise. So I think, again, the last one's not the reason to do it. For me, it was the impact and some of the personal values that I had, but there's several reasons. So it's really good. It's really good for people to get in and live out what they feel is important. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
I think you would probably agree with me on this. I think it's also a value add for state employees. I think there's something valuable, because I think there's an assumption that there's never change in private sector, right? Well, you guys don't have to deal with changes in leadership every 4 years and what goes with that and changing things. And I'm like, you know what it's like when a new CEO comes into a company? They're making lots of changes. So I feel like there's part of that. And I think really great leaders can come from private sector. And man, what you can get out of people when they've got good leadership, it's astounding.
People, strategy, execution. There are beautiful three things, whether it's in the private, nonprofit, or government sectors. And it's definitely something that you have to do in nonprofit or private sectors. And I will give it to government leaders and staff. They are really good at systems and kind of thinking through things in a deeper way about how to work in a matrix environment. And so that also was a great learning process for me. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, I knew I would enjoy having you on this program. I remember when I launched it, I made my little list of the people who I wanted to have in the first year. And Shawn Sullivan, you made the top of that list. And you affirmed what I said at the very beginning. You can thank me for where you're sitting at today. So I knew it. I loved working with Shawn Sullivan. He was so awesome. And when he became the budget director, that meant that he sat in on our senior staff meetings more, which meant I got to see him a lot more. So that was fun. As we wrap up our time together, I always ask people 3 different questions. First, I want to know the best book you've read recently, the best podcast you're listening to, and what's the best advice you've ever been given?
Best book, maybe a personal or professional one. And so personal, I just got through reading The Accidental President. I don't know if you've ever read through that, Kim. It's about Harry Truman. It was fascinating. I think I finished reading it a week or two ago. It was about the challenges that he had as a new VP to FDR. Had only been on the job, I think, for 80 something days before FDR died. He was kind of kept in the dark during that start of that 4th term of FDR, and then ascended to the presidency, took that oath, finding out kind of the true state of the war on 2 different fronts, and didn't have any idea that there was this experiment around the atomic bomb, and just walked through 4 or 5 months of the crucible of kind of going from being in the dark to president at one of the most trying times of our nation's history. And it was a great look back on that. And I didn't really know anything about Harry Truman until then, but that's a great read.
Okay.
There you go. I also, maybe for a leadership book, for those of us that are leadership nerds, I recently took my team through Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And for those that are looking for good operating strategies or execution platforms, would highly recommend that book. Second one was podcast, Kim.
Podcasts, yes. Besides Executive Shift, what's your favorite podcast?
Have you listened to Bully Pulpit? I love that podcast.
Yes, I do. Eric Teasel.
Yeah.
I'll send him texts after he's done. I'm like, you need to do this.
It's a podcast around politics from a Christian worldview. It's great. Weekly podcast. Yeah. I've also listened to and love, maybe a recommendation, American Elections, Wicked Game. It's 50 plus episodes I've listened to a couple times that goes through all 47 elections in our history, and it's a fascinating podcast as well, Kim.
Oh, good.
And then Best Advice, that's a good one. Hanging around older adults most of my career, I've had lots of wisdom imparted to me. Some that I can't repeat, but probably the best one I'll say, and I'll throw out this as personal advice, came from a gentleman named Ralph Schaefer, who was an 82-year-old retired pastor early in my career that was living at a community that I led, who said, "Shawn, the best thing you'll ever do is start reading the Bible and never stop." And I've read through mine 82 times, and it's the best thing I've ever done. And unfortunately, I discovered too much later than that is such a true statement and one of the transformative parts of my life. So that is one of the best things or advice I've ever heard, Kim.
Wow, that's great. Well, how can you top that one? Shawn Sullivan, thank you so much for spending a little time with us, sharing kind of your journey and what you learned from that, and what you were able to bring to the state of Kansas. You were a huge asset for us, and I'm so grateful to have worked alongside you in that during that season. So folks, thank you so much for watching The Executive Shift. If you have an interest in serving in government at a C-suite level, that's what your next career trajectory is, or you're currently in that role in the private sector, Bird Dog Recruitment would love to visit with you, and you can reach out to me at kim@birddogrecruitment.com. Thank you for joining us, and have a fantastic day.